It's the year of the quarterback here in Colorado, and today on the Denver Sports Podcast, we're talking all things quarterbacks. Where does Shedueur Sanders rank amongst all QBs at CU? We'll talk a little Bo Nix, of course, and we'll talk that and a lot more with our boy Henry Chisholm joining us. That's coming up next on the Denver Sports Pod. Day here, live from the Toyota Lounge on the Denver Sports Podcast. I'm Christian Saez. This is Henry Chisholm joining me, doing a little double dipping today. You went just from the Broncos pod to now talk more quarterback / Broncos / CU, all of that stuff. Thanks for joining me, man.
Absolutely. No, sorry, this is going to be fun.
I mean, I know what's coming. Right when, I know what's coming.
Like, I did it to myself.
I know.
Yeah, no, it should be a fun one. I don't get to talk about the Buffs much.
I know.
So it's always kind of fun to jump in there.
I know.
And then talking Broncos to a wider, more well-rounded audience.
Well, we will hold off on the Buffs stuff, for at least a little bit, because we got to start, and I figure we can carry the momentum from your last show, talking about the Broncos, talking about Bo Nix. So we'll start off talking about Bo Nix. Another exclamation mark win for Bo Nix against the Raiders on the road. There's some great stats that have been tossed around, whether it just be from an overall Broncos perspective, from a Bo Nix perspective. But today on the show, I want to highlight specifically the quarterbacks, because I think it's an interesting thing that we have here in Colorado, where not only are our football teams across the state really, really good this year. I mean, we can even throw CSU into the mix there, despite their loss to Fresno just a few days ago, and CU losing to Kansas. Like, across the board, Colorado football teams have been exceeding expectations. And you could make the argument that if you're going to be a football team that exceeds expectations, well, you're going to need to have a quarterback who's leading the way. And for the Broncos, I think coming into this year, the Broncos were, at least in my opinion, one of the biggest question marks out of all of the Colorado football teams, because there was this idea of what happened last year with the chaos around Russell Wilson, first-year head coach for the Broncos, Sean Payton, what that whole debacle kind of ended up looking like. And then you go and you pretty much bet the house on Bo Nix, this guy out of Oregon that you're kind of thinking, okay, he has some good stats, some good film, like he looks good. There are some positive things to see when it comes to Bo Nix, but you just don't know how that's going to translate at the NFL level. And you also don't know how Sean Payton's going to be able to bounce back after the frustrating year he had with Russell Wilson. So the question mark was there, and to see where the Broncos have gone this next year, coming into 2024, and I would put 70%, maybe even 60 to 70% of that, if not more, of that success on Bo Nix's shoulders. I think that's why guys like him and Shedueur are leading the conversation right now in this headline of the year of the quarterback here in Colorado, because Bo Nix has, in my opinion, almost single-handedly brought the Broncos back into the limelight across the NFL world.
Yeah, I mean, there's something to that. I think Sean Payton has really helped him.
Sure.
I think Bo is playing incredibly well, but it's also kind of fun to look back at the numbers from Bo Nix this year versus Russell Wilson last year. Because, people forget that Russ wasn't all that bad. He was the year before, but last year, 98 passer rating. Bo's at 89.9. And so, when you're just looking at overall efficiency, Russ was a step ahead. You have Bo at 212 passing yards per game. Last year it was 204.7. So, and I think that kind of sums it up, that Russ might have been a little bit more efficient, as strange as that is to say.
Yeah.
But then you just have a tick more volume from Bo, and all together, I think that kind of cancels out. And that was the big question. Because last year the Broncos are an 8-9 football team. They, down the stretch, needed a win against the Patriots, a game in which they were 8-point favorites, and then they needed to pull off the win in the final week of the season against the Raiders, who at that point had fired coaches and cleaned house. And if they had done that, they would have gone to the playoffs. So like they weren't a terrible dumpster fire football team last year. And then you basically carried things over. You move on from Jerry Jeudy. You move on from Justin Simmons. You also add a couple of guys. John Franklin Myers has been huge. So I thought the roster as a whole maybe took a tiny step back. But given that it's the same system in year 2, you're probably at a wash at everything outside of the quarterback.
Yeah.
So from 8 and 9, can you get a quarterback as a rookie to play as well as Russell Wilson did? That was going to kind of be that barometer. Is that, a little bit worse, you're 7 wins, 6 wins, a little bit better, you're 9 wins, 10 wins. And what we've seen is that just the fit seems to be better. Sean's able to run plays he's more comfortable with. He's able to get more creative because he trusts his quarterback to kind of just go through the reads as they're supposed to be read, deliver the ball. And because of that, the Broncos are in position to take a step forward, despite having a rookie quarterback, which, you could probably count on one hand the number of times a team has taken a step forward with a rookie quarterback in the past decade in the NFL. It just doesn't happen, especially when you're replacing a veteran who's done the things that Russ has done. Rocky time in Denver, but in general, good quarterback. You see what he's doing with the Steelers.
Well, and let's be honest, too. If we're looking realistically at the weapons that the Broncos have surrounded Bo Nix with, they're not bad, but they're not the Kansas City Chiefs when the Chiefs were, winning, Super Bowl after Super Bowl, or even this year having a lot of success as well. Like, the Broncos are a good team, but they're not a great team overall. And so I think that adds to the argument for Bo Nix of why it's been so impressive, is because it's like, hey, you're doing what you're doing this year with, as you said, if the same, if not worse pieces than you had last year with Russell Wilson, and you're doing better, which is why I credit the larger sum of success in my eyes on Bo Nix and Sean Payton as well, but I think Bo Nix for going out and executing, because there's a real world possibility in which this looked totally different if Bo Nix hadn't ascended as quickly as he did. And he's done it in a world in which, rookie quarterbacks are just outside of Daniels. Rookie quarterbacks are struggling right now. Look at what's going on in Chicago right now with Williams. And although he had a better game, this last weekend, like he doesn't have his feet underneath him playing in Chicago. So I look at what Bo Nix has done here, and I feel like it's more impressive given the lack of weapons that he has to utilize. And you go put him on a team like the Chiefs, or the Bills or someone like that. Like, what does he look like there? Like, that's, it's those what if situations. I just think you can almost, I feel for the first time, at least since I've lived here in Colorado, a sigh of relief when you see Bo Nix playing out there. Yeah, he's going to have bad games. He's going to have his moments. He's a rookie quarterback still. Let's not forget that. But you feel confident, and Sean Payton shows that he feels confident with Bo Nix at the helm.
Definitely. And I think the Broncos have built their team very well this past couple of years. I think that they've gotten to the point where there aren't really any holes on the roster. Like, at every position, like, you look at those receivers and say, yeah, that's a good NFL group of receivers. You look at the offensive line, say that's a good NFL offensive line. You look at the running backs, you say, like, they're solid. Like, that's a group of stars. And that wasn't necessarily the case a couple of years ago. What they're missing now is game changers. So what you need is, okay, you've got this, call it just a pretty average football team across the board. Maybe a little bit above average is what we've seen, or maybe coaching is making them a step above average. And because of that, you're sitting here at 7-5. Now, you go and you add a couple of big names, whether that's, you use your first round draft pick and go get some free tight end or running back, or maybe even a receiver, even though you have so many at this point. Like, you're to the point where you can start just looking for the elite of the elite, adding Pro Bowlers to the roster if you can, All Pros to the roster if you can. And you saw that with the Texans last year. where they did kind of that same thing where they had a pretty well-balanced team. They had kind of the stable of receivers, young guys who were good, but you didn't really know exactly what they were yet. And what they do, they go get Stephon Diggs, they go get Danielle Hunter, a great pass rusher, they go get Joe Mixon, and it hasn't worked out perfectly. Like, Stephon Diggs has gotten hurt. They've had what other turbulence they've had that's caused them to not be able to build on last year the way they probably would have liked. But that's going to be where the Broncos are, is you get through the season, hopefully with a playoff appearance. Who knows? Anything's possible. You go win a playoff game. You win a couple maybe. But then next year you get to say, we're set across the board. We can just run it back. But if we can just add a couple more pieces where we see value out there, then that's how you can kick it up to the next level. And you hope that Bo and the rest of the team keeps growing. And all of a sudden you could look at next year as a year where, you're ahead of schedule, but if all goes well in the next 9 months, why can't you enter the season being seen the way the Texans were last year as Super Bowl contenders?
Well, and I think it's interesting that you bring that up, the continuity from year to year, because the NFL is obviously different than college. In college, we've seen so much, especially with the transfer portal and NIL, all that kind of stuff, that teams can go, to a CFP one year and then not even come close the next year because they are starting from scratch. The NFL, you can build year after year because of the way that things are set up in the changes or in the difference between the NFL and college. So when you're looking at how the Broncos are set up, I think if you were coming into this year, that was part of the question mark was, you got all this dead cap space with Russell Wilson and that whole situation there. And so it feels like the Broncos are kind of pigeonholed into this very limited space to be successful. Like, you've got, very few opportunities, very few options. You are putting your entire hopes and dreams on pretty much one guy in Bo Nix, or your quarterback, before they made the decision to go with Bo Nix, and hoping that he's the one who works out because you don't have any other room for error. The Broncos fans and team can take a little bit of a sigh of relief, at least knowing that if Bo Nix continues on the trajectory that he's been on over the last few weeks, months, you're feeling confident about where things are at. You don't have to have that worry of, oh my God, what is this going to look like over the next 5 years, 10 years, because we just don't have the money and the cap space and all this kind of stuff. We're anchored down by this bad contract. And I was even seeing, I don't remember who posted it, and maybe it was Romy Bean, posted on Twitter like a video of the Penners, walking into the stadium, and there were Broncos fans in the background yelling like, "Thank you for saving the Broncos," like hyped up. If you had that same situation 2 years ago, the tone's different, and so I think Broncos fans are starting to have this sigh of relief, saying, you know what, the revolving door is closing. There's continuity here. The ownership, there's a true owner, a board, a true coach, a true quarterback. Like, all of these pieces have finally lined up. And now we can start to build not only on success this year, like you said, expecting to make a playoff, maybe even get a playoff win or two this year. But what does that mean next year? How do you get yourself to a place where in the next 2 years, you're a Super Bowl contending team? That's a crazy thought if you had asked me that a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah, it is. But things change quickly in the NFL. Like other sports, it takes time to get better. The NFL is one where just overnight, like, boom, you have it. Like, people forget the Texans were supposed to be the worst team in the NFL last year. Like, we used that comp, but that was supposed to be the worst team in the NFL. You remember what the Lions were?
Oh, my God, yeah, the Lions.
You jump from where the Lions were 2 years ago to where they were 18 months later, and all of a sudden you're saying, like, this was supposed to be like a 3-4 win team. Now we're saying this is Super Bowl contender.
Well, and talk about, they build every year. That's the thing is, like, they didn't just go win a Super Bowl the first year they realized they were good. Like, they got to the playoffs. They took a kind of tough loss in the playoffs. It's been a building process to where now you're like, okay, you guys are a legitimate competitor. You guys can win a Super Bowl this year, and now you're in the window where you have to achieve that. I see that future for the Broncos, and I think the world is starting to see that too. Like, you look at the national headlines across all of the football world. Barstool had the Broncos, Big Cats rankings had the Broncos in the category of a playoff team. And the Broncos, I think, have been a team that's been overlooked in recent years, understandably so, given all the turmoil that's been going on and the controversy and all that kind of stuff with the quarterback situation. But the world has been put on notice, and it's been led by Bo Nix. And that is why I think it's the most influential part of all of this, is that Bo Nix is getting on graphics right now with Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback with 20-plus touchdowns and 2 or fewer turnovers in a 10-game span. Like, the national media is running headlines of Bo Nix, saving the Broncos franchise, Bo Nix turning things around. Like, I love that. I absolutely love that.
Oh, definitely. I just pulled up the Lions. It's kind of crazy. So 2021, first year of Dan Campbell and Jared Goff, they're 3-13. They're 3-13-1. They had a tie in there. Yeah. Next year, again, same quarterback, same coach, 9-8. Next year, make it to the conference championship. Like, they could have been a Super Bowl. This year, they're the best team in that NFL. Like, things just change on a dime. Maybe there's 1 year in between being like terrible and great, but it's hardly ever more than that if you're actually ever going to get to the mountaintop. Like, it's just the Broncos kind of caught that wave. And, this week was a fun one in particular for me because one of my comps for Bo Nix in the draft was, I think, out of the gate, he can be Gardner Minshew. And so it's kind of fun just to see him and Gardner Minshew go up against each other. And 2 things really stand out. The reason he's not is because he's bigger than Gardner is. He's also a better athlete than Gardner is.
Yeah,
and I think
totally.
I think both those things, I don't think I'm the only one who's surprised by the fact that he is doing all of that. Yeah. At the same time, like when he was 18, he ran a 4.6 40, and which would make you think that if he had actually run one last offseason before the draft, that might have actually been like 4.5s at worst. And if you get into 4.4s as a quarterback, that's freaky. So maybe we should have seen this coming. But the point is, week 1, if you go back and watch Bo Nix, you see that Gardner Minshew comp. Like, there is a lot of that, like, make something happen out of chaos, but at the same time, you throw a couple picks. The thing is, by week 3, he'd already leveled up.
Yeah.
And we've seen him level up again since then. And, that was kind of the question, is can a guy who's 24 improve significantly from where he is right now? And, the answer was always yes. There's always room for improvement, especially you get to the NFL. You start working with Sean Payton, one of the best NFL coaches of all time, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Like, there will be improvement. And what we've seen is that he has improved to the point where he's not going to hold this team back. 5 years from now, 8 years from now, whatever it might be, he will not be holding the Broncos back. But can he get to the point where he's consistently carrying this team? That's kind of the question that's left, and that's what you need to be in that tier of top guys, the Mahomes, the Josh Allen, the Lamar Jackson. Because what we've seen is he can be Derek Carr. Like, if you line him up against Derek Carr week after week after week after week, he's going to play that to the draw at worst. Like, that's what we've seen. Whether that's 5 years from now, 8 years from now, that is what he is. The next step is kind of staring you right in the eye, and that's, can he now go be like Jared Goff at first, and then maybe there's one more step after that. But it's been a fun ride.
Direction. Yes,
absolutely.
Steps in the right direction. I agree. Well, speaking of steps in the right direction, I want to make a comparison after this break between him and another Broncos quarterback who has a lot more fame, a lot more longevity here in Denver. So we're going to make that comp when we come back. But before we do, got to give a shout out to our friends over at Empire Today. If you're looking to replace your floors, whether you're in a business, whether you're at home, whatever it is, Empire Today has you covered. They are one of the best in the business when it comes to getting your floors done, not only quickly with quality, but also with great customer service. They are an absolute blast to work with. They're so easy, they're so nice, and they don't feel like they're pressuring you in any ways. They're just there to help you out, to make sure that whatever you want, whatever your vision is for your home, for your living space, for whatever floor you're trying to get replaced, they want to make sure that they make that happen for you. They've done incredible work for my wife and I as we've been getting ready to move out of our home, and so we've been looking into replacing our floors. They did a great job here in the studio floors, which I know you don't see in here, but if you've walked into the studio at any point, this is a great studio setup. We do a lot of good work in here. This is a good, fun place to host all of our shows, and the floor, it's a part of that. It's a part of that because we want to make sure everything looks good here in DNVR. So Empire Today, they really have you covered in every single way. So if you're looking to get your floors done, especially this holiday season, this upcoming year, you're trying to save up a little bit and get ready to replace those floors, schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners of this show can receive a $350 off discount when you use promo code DNVR. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday.com/DNVR for details. Well, we also got to share some love with our buddies over at Bet365 because at Bet365, we don't do ordinary, Hank. I was hearing you on the show before this, the Broncos pod, and I know you were saying some of your bets this weekend.
Oh, yeah.
Cashed. You feeling good about things?
Yep. Yeah, I'm feeling good about things.
Okay.
I'm feeling good.
I know you were doing a little college basketball betting, too. That Auburn game was pretty wild. Did you win some money on that?
I did. Doubled down.
No,
yeah,
doubled down.
Worked out. And
I love it.
Tripled down. But, yeah, now today, Houston and Duke. Just money lines. Both should win. Just got to get it done, and we'll be happy. And I think I'll probably add Maui Invitational stuff.
Yeah.
What time are the Buffs? The Buffs are
playing UConn tonight.
Is it? I can't remember what time it is. It might be pretty soon.
No, I think it's later tonight, actually. I just pulled this up. We're going to talk a little bit about that later, not too deep into the 1:30. You're right, it is. Wow.
Yeah.
It's early.
Yeah, so I'm going to get home and watch that.
Duke and Kansas tonight, 11 and 1 seed. That's going to be fun. I know I always say this. You and I are the same when it comes to sports betting. College basketball is one of my favorite sports to bet on just because it's so fast and things change so
really
quickly.
Do.
And Bet365, they have some incredible deals. If you use code DNVR365 when you sign up, you can choose between either a bet and get offer or first bet safety net offer, but they also have some awesome boosts too. Over 10,000 Bet365 and DNVR specific boosts. So you can get on that app, download the Bet365 app, use code DNVR365 when you sign up. Check out our boosts and see why it's never ordinary at Bet365. Must be 21 or older and physically located in Colorado. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. All right, back here on the Denver Sports Podcast, Christian Saez, Henry Chisholm, and we're talking a little quarterback conversation here today. We're going to continue with the Bo Nix conversation because I know before the season started, there was that, discussion about how Bo Nix is going to line up with some of the great rookies in Denver history. And so, of course, John Elway comes to mind when you have that discussion because although he didn't have the best rookie season, he ended up being one of the best quarterbacks in Denver sports history. So I want to, now that we've gotten a little bit deeper into our season with Bo Nix, I want to make that comparison here because actually, if you look at it, Bo Nix has played only one more game in total in comparison to what John Elway finished his rookie season with the Broncos. So, Kale, I sent you that graphic. If you want to throw that up there. I don't know why John Elway doesn't have a picture here on this, but whatever. John Elway's on the left. Elway played a total of 11 games. Bo Nix played 12. Now, you can look on the screen, and we'll break down some of the stats here in just a moment for those of you listening to the audio-only version of this. But I think for me, what stands out most is the consistency across the board for Bo Nix. Yes, John Elway struggled his freshman year with the Broncos. There's a lot of reasons for that. NFL was different back then. Kale was even saying it before that we jumped on the show. You could hit safety. Safeties could hit in the middle of the field, hit wide receivers in the middle of the field without any penalties. Like the quarterbacking was different. Also, football is the type of sport where your ability as a quarterback does rely a lot on your weapons, your tools surrounding you. So you could even have a guy like Patrick Mahomes. If you put him on a crappy team, he's not going to have the same stats as he has on the Chiefs. However, I do think it's interesting to make that comparison between the two and look at just the leaps and bounds that Bo Nix is making this year in comparison to some of the other great quarterbacks that the Broncos have seen.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy that the Broncos have just never had a good rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
Like this is the first time ever that they've had like a rookie quarterback who's been productive. Because you go back through, the only guys who started at least 10 games were Bo, Tommy Maddox, Elway, Marlon Briscoe. You go back to Mickey Slaughter, I guess, in 1963, but they just haven't ever really played a rookie quarterback, which I guess in the past was more of a thing. Like, you draft Jay Cutler and say you sit for a year, you get your 5 starts, whatever. Same thing with Tebow. It's just a thing that happens. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Bo it was last week, I think, set the all-time rookie record for Broncos quarterbacks, 2,500 yards.
Yeah.
It's like that.
Yeah, 25-48.
I could not do that, but that does feel like, I don't know. You throw Cortland Sutton at quarterback, he could get you 2,500 yards. That is not a big number.
It is. You're right.
It's pretty crazy.
That is crazy. I guess. But it also, I see what you're saying.
It also means, though, that whatever it may be, 30 years from now, the next time the Broncos have a rookie quarterback who's playing really well,
he's going to be
breaking all Bo's records. Maybe that's 20 years, maybe it's 50 years, but it's going to be Bo's name at the top of the record book.
Maybe it's going to be Archie Manning's kid.
Which is going to be fun.
Yeah,
it could be. Yeah,
right? We're going all the way around.
So it was Archie, then it was Arch. So maybe like the grandson is just R.
There you go.
I don't know.
We're changing things up a little bit.
Maybe he goes the opposite direction and lengthens it and
Archibald.
goes by Archibald.
Archibald.
Yeah.
Hey, I like that.
Yeah.
That's a much better idea. Archibald Manning, new quarterback for the Denver Broncos.
Wow.
We'll run with it. I think the best stat for me out of this entire line, if we're just looking at Bo Nix, 6 interceptions on the season. Compared to the 14 for Elway. Like, it started a little bit slower for him, and you had talked about him taking a step up every year, every week over week. He just has looked better, and there's been some hiccups here or there, but his ability to limit turnovers, limit those rookie mistakes, and again, he's had a couple of them early in the season. But as he's gone on, he seems like he's gotten more confident in where he's not making those types of mistakes that actually, I'll throw this out there, the types of mistakes that we've seen Shedueur make a lot, where you're like, oh, he's running around, he's obviously not going to be able to get this ball out, and he could just throw it away instead of throwing an interception or trying to force one in there. We know how fun that is for quarterbacks to try to do those kind of things, especially for rookies to try to put on that, vintage Russell Wilson type of highlight reel that we used to see out of him, before he came to the Broncos. Like, he's doing a better job of being smart. And that's, I think, the most important thing, because when you see a rookie who can have the ability to build a team successfully and a team can build around them as a quarterback, you've got to have a quarterback who can be smart in those situations. And Bo Nix has, week after week, improved his ability to command the game offensively, to limit mistakes, to limit turnovers, to make the right types of plays, to not also get too down when you go 3 and out and you're like, all right, you know what? That drive just didn't work out for us. We're not going to get down on ourselves. How many times this year did we see Bo Nix have his best drive of the game early in the season be the last 2-minute drill drive where you're like, all right, like when it mattered most, he showed up and played great football. That's where I see that translating down the road too. You just have a guy who's cleaning things up week after week. He's getting better. I just feel like you can't say enough good things about this young quarterback.
Yeah, no, he's playing really well, and it's just been a bit of a roller coaster because those first 2 weeks really were rough.
They were, and we all were kind of like holding our breath, like,
oh, totally.
What's going to happen? Yeah,
and then like that Jets game, like that was kind of the last time we talked about John Elway as a rookie, because that was when, there were a whole bunch of stats. I can't find the good ones. I'm just trying to look back through my Twitter, but about all those missed throws. Remember, it was that rain game. I think it was like the fewest yards, fewest completion percent, like whatever, in a win since. What was it? It was the fewest yards in a win since. I don't even think Tebow did. I think it was since Elway, and it was when Elway got benched during his rookie year. It just happened to be that season. So you go from like those first couple weeks where you're throwing the picks, you get to week 4 where things are starting to steady, you're finding a win, but it's still getting ugly. And then ever since then, that would be the last 8 weeks or so, everything has just been everything you could have really hoped for. And a lot of it is he's just finding comfort. I think Sean's doing a great job of designing this offense and making the reads easy. And Bo's taking advantage. And then when the play isn't working out, he's athletic enough to go and make something happen. It's been interesting to see he hasn't run as much. Feels like the past month or so. Because there was that kind of month in the middle where everything kind of unlocked because he was able to get out of the pocket, go pick up 15 yards with his legs, and all of a sudden the defense needs to adjust to that. But we're hardly even seeing the read options at this point because everything's just working so smoothly with him playing from the pocket. So I think that's a step. That's a step that we talk about with Patrick Mahomes, right? The first year, the Chiefs are setting records in RPO usage, read option usage, but then it just kind of dwindles to the point where they don't use it all that much anymore. You see that same thing happening with guys like Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen because that's just the growth of quarterbacks. And again, it all comes back to we're seeing Bo take another step forward every 4 weeks at this point, which is very exciting because the Broncos look like a good team. like a team that deserves to be in the playoffs. And if you get one more step up from Bo before the playoffs start, all of a sudden, again, maybe winning a game there is possible.
Yeah. Well, and I don't want to. I don't know. I don't want to. Reopen old wounds. But, it's like you go back to the whole idea of like, if you had beaten the Chiefs, you should have beaten the Chiefs in that game. Like this conversation just deepens even further. And I think I will say a lot of the national media that I've seen over the last couple of weeks has actually given him credit for beating the Chiefs. Like a lot of them, I even heard Stephen A. Smith the other day on First Take be like, yeah, Bo Nix, they should have won that game. They won against the Chiefs. It's going to be a loss in the on the schedule, but I think a step in the right direction is really all you were hoping for the Broncos before this season started, and now everything's shifted into this idea of like we're a playoff team, so we're a Super Bowl team next year. That's the route in which you're going. So I love it. I love that we get to have these conversations. I love that on a show like this, the Denver Sports Pod, we get to actually dive into the quarterbacks and say, and not in a bad way either. Like we get to say, like these guys are leading the way for Colorado football right now, and I want to keep talking about it. So I got to take a break.
Okay.
After the break, though, I do want to touch on our other big Colorado quarterback that we have here in the Colorado area, Shedueur Sanders. He's although they had a tough loss to Kansas, he's still in the conversation for one of the best quarterbacks in all of college football this year. So let's have that conversation when we come back. But before we do, got to give a shout out to some of events that are coming up here at DNVR, specifically a couple days after Thanksgiving, December 2nd, DNVR Broncos tailgate going to be happening from 3 to 6 p.m. Monday, a little Monday night football action. I know it's supposed to be a little chilly out there, but that honestly to me is the best way to enjoy a tailgate. Like if it's 80 degrees and I don't want to let me bundle up, like give me those cold Denver tailgates on a Monday, a few days after Thanksgiving. That's going to be a lot of fun. You guys have the pregame show going on before that. It's going to be a blast. I know you've gone to every single one, so you're going to be hyping it up.
Oh yeah,
partying it up there.
This game, obviously, Monday Night Football is going to be crazy, but with the Broncos where they are, quick plug for our friends at Game Time. It's only $83 to get into this game, which is insane. Like
that is insane.
Like I'm skewed because the Peyton Manning era was great, but that was the last time the Broncos had like a playoff team. It would have been $250 to get in the door.
I know.
So $83 to go Monday Night Football, insane. Including all the fees.
The culture has shifted. I don't want to dive too deep in this, but culture has shifted around football in Denver. I mean, we can get into this later, but
after a playoff run, it comes back.
It comes back. Yeah. It comes back. Spread the word. It's coming back. But yeah, so DNVR Broncos tailgate Monday, December 2nd, 3 to 6 p.m. You can find more information about that at thednvr.com/events. That's on our website, so be sure, don't miss out on that. Also, got to give some love to our friends over at Toyota. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR, official vehicle here in our office and beyond. And I've said it before, but cold weather's coming. Mountains are supposed to get like 2 feet of snow. I know Kale's got goosebumps hearing me say that. So you want to have a car that just makes your life easier. And Toyota is set up as a car, or has options of cars that can and will make it through a tough winter here in Colorado. There are a lot of cars out there that can't do that are struggling in this winter weather conditions. Toyota's got so many choices. You can do Toyota Tacomas, Tundras, RAV4, the Highlander. Like I've got an old 2007 Toyota Highlander that can still hang up there with the best of them, 4-wheel drive, all-wheel drive. RAV4 looking like my next car probably in the next year or two. But whatever you're into, they've got so many great cars. All of them can make sure that they can get you where you need to go all winter long. And they're also affordable. They look great. They're great cars. I can't say enough good things about Toyota. So visit your Front Range Toyota stores at a location near you. AutoNation Toyota, Arapahoe and Centennial, Corwin Toyota in Boulder, Groove Toyota in Littleton, Mountain States Toyota in Denver, Stevenson's Toyota East in Aurora, and Stevenson's Toyota West in Lakewood. Toyota is the official vehicle of DNVR. All right, transitioning here on the Denver Sports Podcast, want to talk about our other big quarterback, at least big named quarterback here in Colorado. Shedueur Sanders having an incredible season despite the loss. I'm not going to talk too much about the loss in particular. You can head to our DNVR Buffs show to get more breakdown on that. But if you look at Shedueur and his time with the Buffs over the last 2 seasons as a whole, Yes, he's had some struggles with lack of an offensive line last year that was not protecting him. That obviously hurt some of his ability to kind of rise, I think, in the stats rankings across all of CU quarterbacks. But given where Colorado has shifted over the Coach Prime era, how going from a 1-11 team to a nearly college football playoff team, or still in a conversation of a college football playoff team within 2 years, at least a bowl team within 2 years, the rise has been meteoric. And you can credit a lot of that, although I won't give as much of the credit on Shedeur's shoulders as I did to Bo Nix, because you've got a guy like Travis Hunter who's, carries a lot of that weight too over at CU. But Shedueur is there's no doubt that he's a guy that has also been a huge factor at bringing CU the success that they've had over the last 2 years and specifically this last year. So it brings up the question, where does Shedueur rank in terms of historic CU quarterbacks? Where do you have him on that list? Again, with the small sample size, the shifting of college football and the era that we're at, in college football today, where do you put him on that list?
To me, it's an easy number one. Like I mean, he has the 2 seasons with the most passing yards, which is pretty crazy. I think you go back and say, like, Cordell Stewart is great, but Cordell Stewart wasn't Shedueur. Like, there were a lot of things he did really well. It's no disrespect to him, but you've got, like, a potential Heisman candidate.
Yeah.
Like, it's tough having Travis on the same team, and that whole race has just been a strange one this year, just with the lack of good quarterback play and with the two-way player and Genty being a Mountain West. There's just some weird stuff happening. But to me, it's Shedueur, and I don't even think it's a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. And Cordell is ranked 1 on Ranker right now, ranker.com.
Really?
But they don't have Shedueur on there because Shedeur is still playing currently. So, it would be no surprise if that ended up changing by the time Shedueur is gone into the NFL and you can look back and say, okay, now we can evaluate his entire career at CU. I think the biggest thing for me, and I agree with you, the biggest thing for me, though, is just where has CU gone over the last 2 years with Shedueur leading the way at quarterback. Yes, Travis Hunter's an incredible, piece. He's, I think, should win the Heisman this year if he continues to play well over the next couple games. But Travis Hunter aside, you still have to have a great quarterback who can lead your offense to success. And on top of that, how many times has Shedueur made a play, made a Hail Mary pass against Baylor, or had a 2-minute drill to save you a game in late minutes? Against some of the what was it, North Dakota State, to open up the season where that was a tight game getting in towards the end. Like, that's where, for me, Shedueur. Yes, Travis Hunter's great, but Shedueur was the one who led those charges. Shedueur was the one who made those plays happen. And on top of that, he's done it across 2 seasons with very limited help up front on that offensive line. Even this year, although it's gotten better, his offensive line still isn't, I think, where Coach Prime wants them to be and where we want them to be. I just think with where CU has improved and how quickly they've improved over the last 2 seasons, I would be surprised if you gave this to anyone else. It's got to be Shedueur.
I agree. I think the case against it might be, first of all, era adjustment always has to be in there. What would Cordell look like in like these modern offenses with RPOs and read option? Like, if anything, that would really help him out. I would also say that Shedueur might have the best group of receivers in CU history. Looking back, there was like a moment when Charles Johnson, Michael Westbrook, and Ray Caruth all crossed over in the 90s, but they're all at different points in their career, so I'm not sure. I wasn't alive in the early 90s, so I couldn't speak to that. But you just look at the plays these guys are making. Obviously, you've got Travis Hunter leading the way. Maybe that's where you could go, because there are a lot of throws where it's like, one-on-one, big guy just went up and got it over the other guy. At the same time, though, you can't take that away from him. That's just playing.
You still got to put it there.
He's gotten some help.
Yeah, and the other side of that too is, I think, if we're going to be critical of anything from Shedueur, it's what I mentioned earlier when I was doing the Bo Nix comparisons. He's still young. He still makes those forced passes that can get him into trouble at times. But that's it. Like, aside from that, like, he's been solid. He's been clean. I mean, the dude can even take a dirty hit from Kansas and where dude's trying to, rip your kneecap out, and still get up and go ball out for the remainder of the game. Like, Shedueur, I think, is the number one quarterback, but I want to shift or evolve this conversation even further, because now if you look ahead with the Kansas loss, it makes the road to the playoffs a little more challenging, obviously, but you're still a bowl team if you're Colorado, and that's still a step in the right direction. Although it's a bummer, that they weren't able to, or as of now might not be able to make the playoffs, depending on how things go. But I wanted to ask you this: if the Buffs make a bowl game, and let's say they end up playing against 3-loss Alabama in a bowl game, do you play Shedueur and Travis?
I mean, it's their choice. If they choose to play that game, they'd be insane, though. You've got to. Bowl games just aren't worth anything.
It's not.
Like if it was playoff games are
does
different.
playing Alabama add a wrinkle to that? Because Alabama's probably not going to make the playoffs. Although, God, I wouldn't be surprised if they did. But with 3 losses, they shouldn't make the playoffs.
I don't think so. I think CU fans would obviously want them to, because I think a lot of CU fans look back to the Independence Bowl in 2009 against Alabama and say that was like the turning of the tides. Alabama won that game and became Alabama. Like 2 years, 3 years later, they're just perennial contenders after being at obviously the same point as Colorado, playing each other in a bowl game in 2009. Meanwhile, Colorado loses that game, and that was kind of beginning of, 90s were incredible. 2000s, they're kind of keeping up with it. Great at the start, but then that was where they kind of had this downturn. So I think there would be a great storyline from a fan perspective to say, we can go kind of flip these two trends. We now are rising, they go down. But, I mean, if you're Travis Hunter and Shedueur Sanders saying, like, we're the top 2 picks in the draft, I don't care about these decades-old storylines. I just want to make sure I'm healthy, and that's why they wouldn't play.
They just do those things sometimes. I mean, they surprise you at times with that kind of stuff. But I think the interesting thing,
do it for his dad.
I was going to say it could end up being a situation like that. He might. I just when I saw that hit on Shedueur, that low, let's be real, dirty hit on Shedueur, the first thing that goes through my mind when he goes down is just like, oh my God, so much money is on the line with that one hit. If you had busted out his kneecap and had to, I mean, look at how long some of those knee injuries like that take to recover. Like, that would have been absurd. It would have been absolutely absurd. So yes, I agree with you. Don't play those games, but it is an interesting thought to think that if you're playing a team like Alabama, the history behind a team like Alabama, I just think bowl games just are a joke nowadays. And they're just whatever. Like, I'm not a fan of any of that.
And the crazy thing is, for the most part, schools lose money. Like, I'm pretty sure it's like 60 to 70% of bowl games wind up losing money for the school that plays them, because they're forced to buy all the tickets.
Bowl games are the baseball of college sports. College
it's
football. It's like every baseball program in college sports loses their athletic department money. That's just bowl games. It's just a money sucker.
It's crazy that they still do it.
Yeah.
Like, with everything changing the way it is, you'd have to think that's going to be gone soon.
I know. I agree. I mean, or there's got to be another way to make it more valuable to the people. But anyways, I don't want to dive too deep into that. I do think it's just going to be interesting to see how things progressed for CU.
Yeah.
And I love that we get to talk about another 5-star quarterback in Julian, Juju Lewis coming over.
Yep.
That's going to be big, especially with Michigan, getting Bryce Underwood as well. Like, it's going to be competitive. CU is going to be competitive, for years to come. And that's fun. It's fun to talk about the Broncos. It's fun to talk about CU and just all of our teams. Whether you're a CU fan or not, like, it's still fun to have good football being played. I'm not a CU fan per se. I didn't grow up here, didn't go to CU. Not a CSU fan either. So I can watch both of those teams and be like, hey, I just want to see good football. Like, that is my goal out of all of this. So it's fun to get to see that. I do, after the last break, though, I do want to talk a little bit about how the football culture in Colorado has shifted over the last few years. And some of it understandable. Some of it I just think is the way things have progressed or degressed as time has gone on in sports. So I want to get through to that here in just a moment. But before we do, got to hit our last break here. Pause for a second, and we'll come back. All right. Back here on the Denver Sports Podcast. And I want to throw this topic out there because I know it was kind of the talk of social media over the last few days. Vic Lombardi tweeted it out. I don't know if you saw it, where he was getting all hot and bothered about people seeing his neighbors out walking around during a Broncos football game, and kind of being like, "Hey, like what? Back in my day, this kind of stuff never happened." What's your thoughts on that? Yeah, I mean, because I know you're a football guy. We're obviously both football guys here. Does that get your blood boiling a little bit when you see people not taking this type of successful Broncos team seriously like they are?
Yeah. That's a part of it. I think the big thing is like the sports are the culture in Denver. Like that is what it is. This is not a music town or an arts town or food or anything. Like this is a sports town. It's that simple. Like you can say like, I like riding my bike. It's a great place to ride my bike. I like going up to the mountains. It's a great place to ride my bike. It's a ski town. No, all of that is behind sports town. And I think that aspect has been lost in part because the Broncos were bad. I think that it's a lot easier for people to slip away, but more so it's all the people who move here who are here at a time when they don't realize what the Broncos are. And so when the Broncos become that again, they just kind of missed that wave, and so it's just always going to be a little bit off. I think that I moved here because of the sports here. Like that's the only reason I live here. And I think that
Did you really?
Oh yeah. I would not live here if not for the sports.
Okay. Well, obviously it's your job. I just didn't know that was
No.
You were like, all right, I'm moving to Denver for.
Oh yeah. No, I mean,
I love that for you, man.
There would be no reason for me to be here. Like that's what I do.
It's a beautiful place.
I live like a couple blocks from Montana's a beautiful place, more beautiful. Like there would be no reason to leave to come here. I live 2 blocks from the Rockies.
Skiing,
I live like it's worse than Montana skiing. You don't have to drive an hour up there to go get to a mountain. I'll say that.
That is true. I'm a big fishing guy, and Montana. I'm like, you could just walk out your backyard and go fishing.
Like all that stuff is so.
Anyways,
yeah, I get that this is still better for that stuff than a lot of other places, but Denver is a sports town, and if you are here and you don't like sports, you should be kicked out. Yeah, like it's as simple as that. Out. Like you don't belong here.
Get out of our town.
After the Broncos finish the season off, they go and win. Hopefully, win a playoff game. That hype will be back for next year, and within a couple years, they'll kind of come back. Because the truth is, the Nuggets and Avalanche can't carry that because those sports just aren't as important as football.
And there's so many games. Like, it's so saturated.
Oh, totally.
I mean, it's hard to compare apples to oranges.
Totally. But there just can't be a world in which those 2 teams alone are able to make Denver what it's supposed to be. And that's the Broncos' job, and they haven't done their job. And I think that within a few years, hopefully the Nuggets and Avs are still doing what they're doing, and it'll all kind of come back.
Not what they did last night, but
every single person who lives here who says like the word sports ball, it's a straight punch in the face.
It's immediately
like that should not be allowed in Denver, Colorado.
Can I speak on this since I'm the only native here?
Yes.
So it's just different. I resonated a lot with Vic's tweet because it pisses me off.
It does, yeah.
Because when I was a kid, Sundays were ghost towns in Colorado.
As they should be.
Yeah, like you don't, like when the Broncos were playing, people weren't out. There weren't people on the streets. People weren't going to the grocery store. People weren't, that's what you did if you lived in Colorado and the Broncos were playing. Whether it was Sunday night, Monday, Sunday afternoon, like that's what you do here.
Yeah.
And the Broncos are a part, as you guys know, I'm a Nuggets guy first and foremost, but like the Broncos are Colorado culture. Like that's what it used to be. And I think a huge part of this is the television thing. I think with League Pass and NFL Sunday Ticket and all these things, people moved, like Colorado, for better or worse, has become a transplant state, right?
Mm-hmm. Go to a Rockies game, you'll figure that out.
Yeah. It's a transplant state. And because of the way our media has progressed, people don't feel like they have to give up their teams when they move here, right? So they'll just stay being a Vikings fan or a Packers fan.
That's fine, though.
I totally. But so and you've done a great job of like you moved to Denver and you're like, this is where I live now.
Yes.
These are my teams, and that's what I think it should be.
They're your adopted teams now.
That's my thing. Like if you move to Colorado, you should at least pick one team. Like maybe you're not a huge hockey fan, and so you make the Avs like your adopted Denver team.
Yeah.
Like that's.
I don't think that's how fandom works, though.
You don't
just get to pick.
Well, okay,
That is how this works.
I don't think
just get to pick.
It doesn't.
Unless your team is playing. Here's the thing. Unless your specific team is playing. Let's say you move here as a Ravens fan. Okay, that's fine. Be a Ravens fan. But unless the Ravens are playing the Broncos, you can still engage in the Broncos game. You could still engage in what's going on around here.
City, and you should be you should want to be part of Denver as a city. Like, you should just it makes me mad, especially with the Broncos, because the Broncos are Denver. Like, that's how it is, and it should always be that way.
I was talking to someone at the gym about this and this morning, and they literally said to me, they were like, well, I just DVR the games so I can watch them later. Like, I record them on YouTube TV so I can watch them later. And so, like, he was like, I like to, go to the grocery store and do all that kind of stuff during the game. And I almost wanted to punch him in the face right then and there. I'm like, I'm never speaking to you again. Are you? What world are you living in? Like, you're like, oh, this is sports. We can just watch it. What is this? Like some Christmas Hallmark movie that we turn on every once in a while when we want to watch it? Like, no, this is the live Denver Broncos game that's happening right now. If you say you are a fan of the Denver Broncos or even a football fan and are going to engage in the game, like, what are you doing watching it at 10 o'clock at night when it airs at 1:30? Like, that's disgusting to me.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Immediate, straight to jail. Straight to jail.
Take the Avs, for example. Like, so somebody isn't a huge hockey fan, they want to be part of the culture, they come. I think that it's also the Avs' duty to be good enough to make somebody want to watch them. Like, it isn't. I don't think that you could just say, for some reason, I wind up moving to Houston, and it's like the Texans are in town. I watch a Texans game, like I would do that, but it's just not the same,
But even if you're not watching the Texans, even if you're not, like, let's say you did move to Houston and you're not watching the Texans, you're still inside consuming football. You're still inside consuming that.
True.
That's like, I guess that's where it gets me, because I'm just like, it's just people take it like it's another day. And I get it. Everyone does their own thing. Like, we're sports people, so we're obviously biased. I teach classes online. I teach online classes at a university here in Colorado. And one of the classes I'm teaching right now is business of radio and television. And I've got 15 or so odd students that are in this class to learn about the business of radio and television industries. So, of course, I did an entire module on sports and entertainment because that runs the TV world. If you want to get into TV, whether you're a news person, entertainment, whatever it is, sports runs the show. Sports makes all the money. Like, look how much the NBA deals are on ESPN and like all this kind of stuff. Even local news, like, Fox 31, CBS, like 9 News. Like, sports runs those stations. That's how they make their money. So I did an entire module on sports, and I had 4 or 5 students out of like 15 students that were messaging me being like, oh yeah, like, I don't watch sports, so like I don't have access to live TV to watch sports, because one of my assignments was involved in like, watch sports and see how many ads play and like, break down all this kind of stuff. And I had people literally messaging me like, I'm just not a sports fan, so I don't really know like how this. And I'm like, I wanted to be like immediate fail. Get out of my class. I don't want to.
I mean, that's one of those where
you're done.
So like you have the Broncos Chargers game a couple weeks from now got flexed to Thursday Night Football onto Prime.
Yeah.
Which means I can't remember. It was probably gonna be like a CBS game. But I mean, that's a $1 million loss for the local CBS station.
Yes.
Because you sell your pregame, your postgame, all those ads add up, and that is where the money comes from.
When
all of a sudden you lose that, there's boom, $1 million out of the budget.
Yeah, when the World Series when it was looking like the Dodgers might have swept the Yankees, Fox was freaking out because they were going to lose over $100 million in projected
and
ad
every
revenue.
local Fox station too, because they get however many of those ads they get to sell themselves. People tune in early, watch whatever you have on there. Those ads are worth more. The ads after the like, that's where all the money is.
It's a culture thing, man.
That's the one piece of culture that has stayed the same.
Let's go down the rabbit hole. The sports culture has changed. I want to dive down this rabbit hole because this is my last topic I wanted to talk about. But UConn plays CU tonight, and in men's college basketball, which is going to be an insane game for UConn. Good luck, CU. But UConn's ranked number 2 in the country. Now, there's been a lot of controversy, I think, over the last week or so, especially as social media has really taken over the sports conversation world, the social world of sports, because clips of Dan Hurley, the head coach for UConn, are circulating. And, and he rides his players hard. Like, he's calling them names. He's getting on them. Like, he's clowning them in practices, screaming, yelling, like throwing stuff, like just losing his mind. And I posted on Twitter today because someone posted a video of him just like screaming at his players at a practice. And I posted on Twitter today. I'm like, hot take. Maybe this is a hot take. I have no issue with this. The sports culture has shifted so much today to where the way I look at that is if you are playing at the most elite level of your sport, football, basketball, baseball, whatever it is, the expectations are also elevated as well. When you're the number 2 team in the country in men's college basketball, the expectations are totally different than if you are playing high school basketball. So if you want to be playing at the level that, you know, those young athletes are playing, I think you have to be able to take that because it's win or bust. Like there is no other option there. And so I just think the sports culture has shifted nowadays to where, you know, we saw this last year with Tom Izzo, the head coach for Michigan State, when he was yelling and screaming at his players, you know, out on the court. And I'm like, maybe I was just raised differently. Like that to me is a coach who expects more out of his players. And those guys are going to be winning players. Yeah. I know there's arguments against that. I know you can go too far, you can take things too far, and it can get unhealthy. I understand that. You got to protect players to a degree. But I also feel like we've become kind of this like sports culture where it's just a little bit more casual and enjoyable, and that's fine for some people. But I'm just one of the, I guess, old-fashioned guys of like, put your head down, you work hard. If not, you're not meant to play at that level.
Yeah, I agree. I think multiple things can be true. First of all, both of the Hurleys, among the biggest a-holes who exist on the planet.
They really are.
Like, there's no way around that aspect.
Yeah,
where it's like,
he's a little much.
Who do you not want to spend time with most in the entire sports world? You throw either of those Hurley brothers in the race, they might win.
It is true. That is true.
That part I agree with. Also, it is basketball coaching, and I mean, since when is being an a-hole a bad thing? Well, you know, like that's kind of been a key part.
Look at
like,
Michael Malone.
Exactly. It's not even just basketball either. Like you go back to, I mean, Bill Parcells winning Super Bowl. Like you can go through all these guys. Like that's part of coaching.
Sean
is
Payton,
knowing
Bo Nix,
when you need
going at it on the sideline. Like it happens. Each other. You expect more out of those guys.
Exactly. We're not. Especially now when you can just leave if you want to. Especially now when, again, like it's not like Danny Hurley. It's like, wait. Or sorry, Danny Hurley.
Yeah,
Dan Hurley, the Bobby Hurley, the two Hurleys. Either one of them, if you go to play for a Hurley, you know what you're going to get. You know, like it'd be one thing if it's like, hey, we just hired this guy. He's an up-and-coming coach. And then he's just like calling you an MF every 30 seconds. Like it'd be kind of disappointing.
Dude, I had that in high school. Like
it's
I had
kind
that
of what
high
it
school,
is. That's just what.
And we were one of the best high school teams in the state. I mean, like that. If you want to be a good athlete, like you have to get pushed a little bit. Now, yes, there are ways to do it.
If it didn't work, then those guys wouldn't exist because they wouldn't win.
I agree. I agree. I mean, but Michael Malone is a perfect example. Michael Malone. I mean, God, listen to go listen to his press conference that we posted on DNVR for after last night's loss. Like he doesn't mince words. And this is NBA where the players run the teams, not the coaches. Michael Malone is the guy who expects you to be playing your best version of basketball every damn night. And if you're not, he's going to call you out on it, whether you're Nikola Jokic or Peyton Watson. And that's what I've come to expect when you watch sports like that, when you watch a team like that. So if you're gonna go and play on a team that is a championship contending team, I'm okay with a coach letting you have it when you're not playing up to that standard. Go watch the Michael Jordan documentary. Like, you want to be the best in the world, then you gotta live into that a little bit. Yep. It's okay if you're not that. You're just not meant to play at that level, you know. And that's where I think it's just like some, you know, especially like I call high school football games. And you see it a lot where it's like, you know, and I saw this even when I was playing high school sports. Like, there are kids who mentally have what it takes to play at that level. And there are kids who their parents think they have what it takes to play at that level. And then you get a coach who's going to push you to that. And they just don't have it, you know? And that's all right. But I just don't have an issue with that. Again, maybe I'm old-fashioned. Maybe I should. Maybe it'll be different when I have kids. But
if we're going to yell at Dan Hurley, I'd yell at him for that stupid technical yesterday.
Yeah, that was dumb.
Mentioned I had that comeback too. I had that comeback too. It would have been 3 for 3, but so let's see. It's 92-92. 1 minute left in overtime. There's a foul, which sends Memphis to the line. Dan Hurley freaks out so much, he gets called for technical, turns the 2 free throws into 4 free throws, makes it a 2-possession game. All of a sudden, they lose because of that.
Yeah.
Like, if you're going to be the screamer coach, you can't be doing it in that situation. There are guys like Pete Carroll. There's a guy who's just nice, friendly players coach. You can do it different ways. And in college basketball, a lot of them lean more the Hurley style, but you get to choose who you go play for. And if you're going to choose to go play for Dan Hurley, you know what you're going to get. And if you're going to go choose to play for somebody else, or it might be like, that is up to you. You can win through different styles. You don't get to complain once you get there. And also, if you're not the one getting yelled at, why are you crying about it on Twitter?
I agree, man. I agree. I'm sure all the parents out there, feel very strongly about this. And like I said, maybe my views will shift when I have kids, but I like a little old-fashioned coaching. We're going to wrap things up here on the Denver Sports Podcast. Jumped around a little bit. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Hey, if I can summarize anything from the show, it's a good year to be a Broncos fan. It's a good year to be a Buffs fan. It's a good year to be a football fan living in Colorado. So make it an appointment next Monday. Don't go to the grocery store. Don't go to Costco. Don't go walk your dog. Watch the damn Broncos game. It's Broncos football. Broncos are going to be a playoff team.
Or leave.
Or get the hell out of Denver. We love it. That's how we end our show. Thank you guys again for hanging out with us. Shout out to Kale for producing things. We'll see you guys next time right here on the Denver Sports Pod.
We all silly like the mayor.